Hello and welcome to the New World Review. I'm Grandline Waifu, and this is your reminder that I watch one episode at a time and write the review for each episode individually. That's about to become somewhat relevant because some of the assumptions I made in episode 116 didn't bear out in 117, and I'm sad about it, but I don't want to change my thoughts on it because they're still valid. None of this was funny, I'm afraid, so here's a selection of stupid noises for your enjoyment. Woo! Wow! Whoa! Let's get into it. Episode 116 might be my favorite episode of the series so far. We checked in with everyone else briefly, but that's exactly how I think it needed to be. We needed to know exactly what was happening and reminded what was happening, but we also needed to have as much time as possible for the stillness and silence required for what transpired. Gon, this episode, got given the chance to change and be more than he is as a person. Not as a combatant, but as a person, and he chose not to. I've never seen Gon be so clear a character as in this episode, and I'm really glad we could work up to this point. Not only was it the clearest we've seen Gon, but it's the first time, I think, after all my pontificating on Killua last week, that Killua has actually seen Gon for exactly who and what he is. When we look at Icalgo, his motivations are pure. His reasoning is clear, and you can see that he values friendship and his friends, and he treats them nicely. Gon has shown that he's the polar opposite to that, and it's a really interesting metaphor that Icalgo's often hidden behind another face, while Gon was the one truly hidden away. This episode, Killua stopped being of use to Gon. In fact, that's not quite accurate. This episode, Gon realized he had a conscience. He'd never had one before, and he wasn't sure where he picked it up from, and I don't think he likes it, because he got rid of it. Or at least, made it feel bad. If Killua hadn't told Gon how PITOU would be of use to him, PITOU and Komugi would be dead now, as potentially would Killua for daring to try to get in his way. I feel somewhat vindicated about my questioning of Kite mentions in the last episode. I noted then that how we talk about things and people tend to indicate how we feel about them, and that the fact that no one had mentioned Kite at all, even Gon, spoke to doubt that any of this was still about him. And I was right. None of this is about Kite anymore. Or it wasn't until Killua reminded Gon that maybe it should be, or that it could be. The absence of friendship in that room will stay with me for some time. The image of the softly lit room with the two shadows is very much how I'm reading that metaphorically, and I think it's a beautiful way to show that there in that room were two people who knew nothing about each other. Briefly jumping to PITOU, we learned a lot from the way they talked and what they did this episode about how they feel about the king and how they felt things were going. PITOU obviously feels very differently to Moth Boy Shia LaPeouf about the changes that have occurred to the king. Rather than being traitorous, they've gone in the other direction. They've softened. They see behaviors that are coming into play that'll destroy the king if Komugi dies, and destroy any chance of the whole world surviving, potentially. What we got to see in this was more empathy in the monsters Gon desperately wants to fight than in Gon. And the fact that PITOU decided to try telling the truth tells us that not only do they truly believe in what's happening, but that they truly believe they were talking to a human in all the senses of the word. But there was no humanity in Gon this episode, and all the art, all the shifts between style, the faded eyes, the rough emptiness, the rage, the tears, all of it looked beautiful and cold and impulsive and empty, and we got so many eyes and so many different iterations that I just kind of disconnected from Gon. I mean, I've always been quite disconnected, but on a new level. Not only was there the lack of humanity, but the lack of human rights. Killua noted the hands on the ground. Gon clearly saw the hands on the ground, and his energy dropped back briefly, only for him to say he didn't care. So he knew what it meant, or he could interpret or infer what it meant, and he didn't care. And let's talk about the function of Killua for a moment. Killua in all of this was there to be a fantastic reminder that Gon's age has nothing to do with his decision making right now. Killua saw the situation. Killua saw that Gon was in distress. He knew there was more happening than met the eye, and he, as much as Gon, has already made friends with one of the ants. So it's not even as though we can use generalized prejudice as an excuse here. Gon wanted revenge because something was taken. Gon wants revenge because his toy is broke and has been turned into someone else's toy, and he will not allow anyone else to puppet something that's his. When PITOU managed to halt Killua enough that Killua, an assassin by trade, stopped to assess and question the fairness of the situation and raise concerns about his own humanity, it made clear how little Gon actually cares about human life or life. His concern is him. Why say his name? Gon freaks. works because it's a source of pride. Because when he kills PITOU, he wants PITOU to know that he is stronger and worthy. But PITOU was already afraid for someone else. Something Gon didn't even stop to consider, because how could he? And that's why Killwa's gone, because Killwa saw all those things in this moment. One thing Killwa has is bucket loads of perception. He's been blinded this whole time because Gon called him a friend, and I'm really hoping that ends now. When Killwa was lying in a pool of his own blood, it wasn't Gon who saved. Gon didn't know where he was. I get it. I truly get it, but it wasn't Gon who saved him, and that's important in this context. When he explained to Ikalgo how his friendship works, he repeated the experiences he's had in friendship that came from Gon. When Ikalgo said, "Thanks," it was the first time it had happened, and that was a revelation for him. The episode is called Revenge and Recovery. I'm hoping Killwa stays Gon. I'm hoping Killwa gets to live the life he deserves with friends who deserve him. While Gon seeks revenge, I hope Killwa seeks recovery of his soul. Let's look at episode 117, because yeah, as much as I was hoping that this was the case, it's not. Episode 117, and it saddens me to find that actually Killwa didn't just come to his senses and leave. He was tapped on the shoulder by a helpful chameleon in a cute tracksuit, as usual. I'm glad he left the situation, because it would have been more damaging for him to have just watched for an hour. But still, I was hoping he'd left Gon off his own steam. Instead, he's just been hurt by someone who I doubt would apologize to him at the end of it, because he wouldn't even see what he'd done as hurtful. Coming from a family of assassins and talking about a family of assassins, it's interesting to me to see how much more empathy and care they have and take than a teenage. I mean, not for ants, which, bye PITOU. I mean, you were being stupid and annoying toward the end there, and you know what? I just, what do you do? What do you say about, I don't have the words for PITOU. I just kind of gesture and flail wildly in his direction, because, dude. PITOU's end speaks to how powerful the Zoldyck family actually is, given that the others struggled with him. And before PITOU's timely demise, really now, read the room, dude, Killwa's granddad seeming to feel remorse for potentially killing someone who is not the mark is fascinating, because the tone of the voice actor didn't seem empty or frustrated. It seemed sad or, remorseful, I guess. It didn't read, to put it another way, as someone who is upset that they'd messed up their job, but as someone who goes out of their way to make sure there's no incidental casualties. What I don't know is whether he felt he was incidentally killing someone who's not a mark through his attack, or whether he thought he was killing someone by letting Gon go in to attack PITOU. Oh, sure. Ultimately, it seems he let his grandson make that judgment and told the father about how Killwa has removed the needle, which kind of suggests it was put there to protect Killwa from the impulsive and stupid situations Gon would get him into. And those situations are, admittedly, horrendous. Killwa has a natural survival instinct, but Gon doesn't. So every time Gon goes somewhere, Killwa's there to drag him out. That needle is what dragged him out last time. The needle's gone. No, the needle's not gone. It's not. The needle's been removed. Yes. Meanwhile, why are men? This entire episode feels like it was brought to us by the letter P for pride. It's just so unreasonable that two men who have a task to do to protect the world instead get mad because someone treated them poorly. They got mad. Not even, they were treated poorly. Not even physically. Just treated them poorly. And it's not even poorly. He just ignored them. He did nothing. And apparently doing nothing is enough. You're alive. Huzzah. You're alive against this thing you know you can't fight, and you can make a plan. You have a task at hand. You have a job. Do the job. Just do the job. First Gon, then these dudes and PITOU, and tantrums aren't going to help you. He humiliated me. Okay, so? That means you can come back stronger and make him regret having done that. In a smart way. Being underestimated is an incredibly powerful tool, and they just decided to throw it away. You literally were running away from someone proven to be more powerful than you. He lets you go because you're not the focus, and instead of coming up with a better plan, you decide, I'll show him. I'll punch him twice. Which is, admittedly, the most I've managed to punch him so far. That rant out of the way, I'm excited to see what happens to Soupy, because he's learned he's not just soupy goop. He's a powerful sentient being with emotion. Of all the characters, loyalty has been such an interesting theme to return to repeatedly, because the characters have different ways to engage the same ideas. In his one-track mindedness, our little fey creature Soupy Youpy seems to actually be the best of most worlds, in that he has the maturity to maintain his one-track mind in a way that protects in the way he knows how. Wait, sentence, no make sensey. Soupy Yuppie is mature, but also one-track minded, and those two things help him out. Super Yuppie is also empty-headed enough that he doesn't think to check in on his boss, but I think we can forgive that as he has the maturity to consider that he needed to learn to manage his emotions to have them best work for him. Oh, and I think in that way it's pretty entertaining that Yuppie is specifically noted not to be human. Of course he would be able to learn something about himself and apply it effectively. He's not concerned with petty mortal issues like people making him look the fool. With an episode dedicated to loyalty, I think it's great that we opened with Gon throwing a tantrum and Killua leaving. I think it's appropriate that PITOU, who had loyalty to no one and nothing, got crushed by the extreme loyalty of the Soldicks, and I think the cat-like protection of PITOU and the bulldog-like stubbornness of Yuppie is telling of a maturity and pureness of thought that the humans just don't seem to have. It's almost as though returning to the animalistic tendencies of each sub-creature gives them the roundness that human society takes away, and isn't that intriguing? While I ponder how the development of ants is coming along and have a well-earned meal, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this review, click here, here, and here. Make sure you're eating, relaxing, and hydrating, and I'll see you next time.